gentlemen, that's right, it is time. Welcome back. We are live in the Legacy Rewind Studios. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Please make some crazy noise for our amazing leaders, Dr. Faith and Pastor So
Hey.
are in the building. Oh my goodness, I forgot what happened to our crowd. We had some crowd.
Yeah.
Oh, there they
Oh,
are.
I just made it up. But that's okay. Yeah.
So, how y'all doing?
Good.
Good.
Okay.
August, getting back into the swing of school and
Right.
church. And
School's about to start back up for some folk.
for
Yes.
our little ones.
Yeah.
So,
So y'all hit the ground running. We're mid-August, right? Smack dab in the middle of the series. Getting back from different other continents. You got your groove back yet? You in a good pace? Feeling good?
Yeah, I am. I feel good.
it's been 2 weeks. I
yeah.
think, we're getting back into the flow stuff. So I have taken time to ease into it only because my kids are home.
Yeah.
And we got to get them ready for school. So I know next week, if the team members thought that the chat was popping this week, next week,
Get ready, team.
Right,
be
I get
popping.
back into the flow of work, and I was just telling them, I'm so excited. Planned out all the wonderful creative things we got to put in place for 2025, and
Oh,
so,
wait a minute.
next week we're gonna hit the ground.
2025.
2025.
So you're strategizing 8 months in
New
advance
Year's Eve
already.
program is already made. We're looking at Easter, colors, blah, blah, all that stuff.
Wow.
We're
Okay.
going to give everybody lots of time to prepare.
Lots of time to prepare. Well, I love to hear that. So growing up, I remember there are certain restaurants that we get to go to, right? And it was a big family, so we had 6 brothers and sisters, and so sometimes when we went to these restaurants where you could just go and they would call all you can eat, right? But one of the issues with some of these places, and I ain't gonna say no names, y'all know what I'm talking about. You have so much that you don't know, like either where to start at or like how much to get or not to get, and sometimes it can just create this habits of overeating and all this. And so, Terrell, what are you talking about? I'm talking about like we get fed very well here. We get fed very well, and so I'm trying to set this up to ask this question. And Pastor Sosa, I throw it to you.
Yes.
We're in the middle of our
Caught it.
series. Oh, look, he caught it. Y'all seen that? We're in the middle of our series called Seeds. What's the goal? Help us out. What would you say the goal is for someone that's coming and eating at this table, right in the middle of the series? At the end of this series, what should I be able to do, think, accomplish, whatever? Help me.
Excellent. I think it ties back to the 3 I's here at Legacy.
Okay.
Identity, which is knowing that we are sons, knowing who we are in God. Inheritance, knowing the gifts that God has put in us. Some of those gifts are our calls, our careers, and the things that we do for a living.
Okay.
But we must live an impact of God in the earth.
Okay.
And anybody who walks through Legacy or comes across any of our services need to understand that sermons, whatever we do,
Right.
it is geared towards helping us know what is in us and living an impact of God in the earth. This month is about understanding finances, our money, our resources, the gifts that God has given us, so that we can maximize God's call on our life. Because not everybody gets to do that. People sometimes fall short, right? And we want to make sure that when it comes to the money, resources, business, what have you, whatever it is that God has given us, we'll learn based on spiritual principles how to live our lives to the fullest.
Dr. Faith, you said this, and I love I love this bar you said. You said the goal of this series is to learn how to multiply what God has given you. Help us. Give us some more to that. Can you? What are some of the things you would say that you may have seen that, hey, this is something that God has given you. This is what it would look like multiplied.
Yeah. So I don't want to get too far ahead because we got 5 weeks in August, right? And I think that the last Sunday, one of the things we want to focus on is how do you multiply, right?
Oh,
Like
okay.
how do you do that? But I think the ultimate goal of stewardship is replication or multiplication,
Okay.
right? So for every believer, everything that is in our hands, what God is looking at is how did you multiply it? How did you multiply yourself? So we talked a lot, about the seed is enough, but and how do you grow a seed? We're gonna go into how do you prune it and how do you harvest it, and multiplying should be the ultimate goal. That when you're dead and gone, right, not only your money but your gifts and talents outlive you. It's that whole legacy of God in the earth
Yeah.
is what the ultimate goal of that is. So that's what we should be thinking about when we're thinking of multiplication.
When you started last week, you mentioned something from my later childhood days, and oh my goodness, when you said this, I was like, I know she did not say Bebe's kids. I don't know if you heard that. Huge shout out to Pastor Tim. I see you smiling over there. But we had a Bebe kid
Yeah,
reference. We don't
moment.
die, we multiply. And so
But in the kingdom, if you don't die, you won't multiply.
okay, so we was just talking about thinkers and intellectual capacity. That's a line that I really. Can you just give us a little bit layer of that? What do you mean if I don't die, I can't multiply?
Yeah. I mean, it's just inside out, upside down kingdom.
Yeah.
The more we die to ourselves, the
Good.
more the Father can grow. The more we die to our ambition, the more God's plan and God's heart can grow. And so even growing money, there comes a place of dying to your thoughts about money,
Yeah.
dying to your why about money. And as you do that, there's an increase. So I know you
Yeah.
have some thoughts around that.
Yeah, I think that death is very specific. It's not a wasteful death. It's a death to self, and it's a death to. It's a planting death. So you have to be planted in God's will, and when you're planted in God's will, you have to die to self so that you can be resurrected.
Yeah.
We're dead to sin and alive in Christ Jesus, alive to righteousness. And so, like she said, inside out, upside down kingdom.
Yeah.
But it's not just any kind of death, it's a specific death to our will so that we can live God's will.
Wow.
Yeah, I spared everybody the science examples because I was like, oh, if I can get a video of a seed when he goes in, it has to rip apart before it can take root.
Yeah.
So anyway.
It is a very graphic thing to be a seed.
Yeah, to be a
It
seed.
becomes violent.
Yes,
You have to
yes,
break through some
yeah,
things.
yeah, to come
And
out.
when you both start assimilating the process of seed and growing, it is very purposeful. It is a very purposeful death. It is uncomfortable. And you talked about the things that were uncomfortable in growing. I have students and children and even grandchildren, and these growing pains, if you're not careful, you will wish those things away.
Yeah.
You don't want to go through this process being like you started off saying,
Yeah.
we're the seed.
Yeah.
So, could you give us some encouragement with these difficult challenges? I think
Yeah.
you called it the toiling season.
Yeah.
What would be something that you would say, okay, this is not just this growing pain or this thing that's uncomfortable. Could you give us clarity to the season of toil and that pain that comes with that?
Yeah, and we were talking about not wasting those seasons, right? How
Yeah.
time is one of the main treasures we've been given. Time, talents, and our money.
Yeah.
And so there are seasons of toiling, and there's a set time for toiling. There is
Okay.
a set time of putting your head down to the ground and pushing through. And I think sometimes we think because we're believers or there's a prophetic word on it that it should be easy. And I think I kept hearing myself say this. I'm like, I don't know very many wealthy people who said, oh, this just came up overnight.
Right.
Everybody that I know that is more self-made had to build, had to push through the ground, had to be consistent. And
Yeah.
so it's just part of the process that's if you're not up to the game, you can't complain. Like you can't be like, "Oh, God is not breaking through," but you quit at everything that you do.
Yeah. It's interesting because I've been making in my thoughts and my meditation, I've been making reference to Genesis 1 very lately. Um, but this is no different. It goes back to the very beginning, the very foundation. The recompense for sin, God telling Adam, is that out of the sweat of your brow,
Yeah.
you shall eat. You will hustle to eat. You will toil to eat.
Yeah.
Now there is purity, or there is God. You can toil less or you toil better or what have you, but it's a spiritual principle. It's a spiritual principle that is set up, and so people try to sometimes circumvent it, but there's no escaping it. Yeah.
I love the fact though that it's not forever. Like
Yes.
it is not forever.
Right.
And you can get in a place of making money without toiling, and it's called purpose.
Huh.
If you're living out of purpose
So
and
good.
you're living out of a place of fruitfulness, right? You will work hard, but it won't feel like hard work. It will feel like purpose.
Yeah.
It will feel fruitful. It will feel meaningful,
Yeah.
right? And so I think even in that, the Lord made a way for us to be able to be productive out of a place of meaning, out of a place of purpose. And then, of course, the wealthy work themselves out of work. They get to a point where they only do what needs to be done or what they want to be done.
Yeah.
So there is a freedom, I feel like, from that level of toil. I mean, it's not the same freedom they had in the garden
Sure.
where you didn't have to do nothing, right? But I think there are levels to that level of freedom.
Thank you for saying that. I want to pose this to you both because you both have a beautiful story, a beautiful intersection of how you all came to be, right? But you said this one thing, and it's just so thought provoking. You said, "Don't squander others' opportunities based upon your belief system." And so, with that statement, I want to ask, with you both coming from different cultures, intersecting, growing into where you are right now, have you ever experienced or had that type of experience where others' belief system and you had to adjust or be aware or not to squander that coming from two different countries, one continent, and now being here? Like, can you talk to us about your experience with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think people can crush your seed at any point, and I'm looking at it more so from the perspective of people's perspective, hindering or trying to squander me.
Okay.
I can't
Okay.
think about a time where someone. Well, I think in pastoring, sometimes we do got to squash some people's dreams because it's just not realistic. Like it's just like you're telling me this, but I don't see your work output, right? Like
Yeah.
you're telling me this, but you didn't finish the homework from last month to get there. So I can see that at times. And I mean, I think I've had one or two people in the past like, you don't have to say that. You don't know what you're talking about. And we just have to wait, time will tell, right? I don't want to be right. Like
Right.
I don't want to be, if loving you is wrong, I don't want to be right. But like it's going to show.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest thing, being a woman preacher, being an entrepreneur, definitely, taking counsel, but also saying what is the Lord saying, and
Yeah.
not allowing the perspective to derail what God is saying. So I don't know if you've had those experiences.
Um, Not that I can remember vividly. My contribution to that is, I've been burned one way or another on two sides. Sometimes letting people figure things out, and I feel like it takes them too long, and they waste their life away. Or trying to help people, short circuit that process and say, hey, we've seen examples of how this turn out, and if you keep going, you're gonna spend years and find out that you're at the same spot, and then it looks like you're killing their dream,
Yeah.
and what have you. And so, wisdom, there's wisdom in a multitude of counselors, and I believe that there are exceptions to every case. If you say, well, you want to play football, and the statistic tells us that 1 out of every 100 or 1 out of every 1,000 very
Right.
talented kids will actually go to the NBA
The
or the
NFL.
NFL. And you say, well, I'm going to do it regardless. Well, 1 out of that 1,000 will go. And if
Right.
that person is good enough, we're going to hear about them and we're going to celebrate them, but we're not going to hear about the 999 kids who didn't make it.
Wow.
But the child who aspires to go next time is so convinced that they will make it. And you have to be careful not to squash their dream, squash the dream. But how can they dream and still keep hope alive on doing something else?
Yeah.
It's probably the balance. So I think, I mean, coming to the US, to be honest, I had an offer not to come. I had an offer to stay back. I had an offer to become part owner of the business I worked with over time. I was an employee, but the value was so good that I was told that if you stay back, you become a part owner
Wow.
instead of leaving. But
But I was here. Like, I mean,
yeah, but I really knew what I wanted to do, and I guess it worked out well. So sometimes you have to let people figure it out.
Yeah.
you gotta find your favor.
Okay. Find you.
The
Look.
Find your
will-
favor. See
Say
how she
that.
spend it?
Favor was on that boat. It wasn't
Find
there.
your favor, y'all. Hashtag find your
find
favor,
Found my
please and thank
favor.
you. Okay, two more bars I'm just thinking about right now. You said, oh my goodness, you said the cross broke certain things for us, not to reap some things that we did deserve. When you said that, I'm like, okay, thank you, Lord. Brand new mercies, new every morning. Talk to us about this the breaking of the cross. Sometimes there's so many different I believe there's infinite perspectives that we can receive from the cross, but this is in association with the
Sowing
seed.
and reaping. Yeah.
Help us.
Yeah, so of course it's a biblical principle. So it's really interesting because what you sow, you reap, and that works in your finances, that works in your relationships. But then sowing into sin, right? Before Christ would have warranted death. But the cross now allows us to have life. And I did add, it doesn't keep you from consequences. You're still gonna have consequences.
Ah.
If you have premarital sex and you get pregnant, God forgives you for getting pregnant, but you're still gonna have a child.
Yeah.
That you're gonna have to take care of. And now you gotta balance all those things. So I love that the cross sets us free from so many things that we deserve.
Yeah.
But it also invites us to still die to ourselves, right? Like it's so crazy. Jesus died and he invites us to a process of dying, which is sanctification. And the more we do that, the more we become like him. And so we can't avoid the process of growth. And just like with everything, finances, like, yeah, you may even get an inheritance or you may get an opportunity. I remember, I mean, I've had people give me some amazing opportunities. And if you're not ready, right? Like you're not ready to take that opportunity,
Yeah.
you're gonna miss that door. And so the process of constantly dying to yourself is the only thing the Lord's asking for now, when before it'd have been you'd have died.
Yeah.
You'd have been dead. So.
Dead.
Yeah, I think everything pivots on spiritual life, and the Bible says that Jesus died the death that we ought to have died. So he paid the price for us. He died to sin so that we can live in righteousness. And I think once that debt has been paid, everything else, we have access to God. We have access to all of God's resources and the wealth of heaven. We're now seated in heavenly places.
Yeah.
And so we operate at a higher level than we were before, salvation. So that in itself is literally God just gave us time back. He gave us time back. He gave us
Yeah.
access back to his original plan. And we talked about rest this week in Bible study. I think that it also adds to that if believers can really be secure in their salvation and operate from that place of rest, there is very little we cannot achieve. Very
Yeah.
little we cannot achieve. Yeah.
You talk about all of these things that God is giving us. And so this next statement, I really just, when you said this, Dr. Faith, I'm really just want to like let this sizzle in your spirit. You said that we are a bank. And you talked about us lending to the Lord. Can you give us just a little bit more to that? Because when you said, I heard everybody's heart be like, wait a minute. Me, in my finite person
Yeah.
self can lend to God?
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Yeah, I mean, just when you give to the poor, when you remember the broken, when you remember the lost, and that whole idea of we give out of our abundance. So for you, it may not be physical money, it might be a meal that you decide to give a young kid that's away from home and can't get back home. But you decide to feed them every single week. Like, yeah, you're lending to the poor in that instance because he doesn't have the resources. And so we all have something to lend, and that makes us a bank. We have time, we have our treasures, we have our talents, and they should be, if you want, to invest well, you can't just let it sit there. You've
Yeah.
got to do something with it. And so, yeah. I want to own a bank one day. That's something that, a lot of people don't know, like a literal one. But I can start by just being faithful with the little that I have,
Yeah.
and finding the people that I'm supposed to lend to.
Wow.
Yeah, it's scriptural. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not just a nice idea. It is scriptural that he who gives to the poor lends to the Lord.
Yeah.
And if you give to the poor physical things, money and resources, God owes you in kind. And of course, God can bless you spiritually for physical things. But typically, if you give to people particular resources, God owes you in kind. That's His word, and it's with interest. God pays compound interest too, and so I would encourage us all to take God up on that opportunity. Every time you can sow, every time you can give, every time you can lend to the Lord,
Wow.
it's gonna come back big time. So
Yeah, I love that compound interest. We weren't able to really look at the full length of a chart, of how things compound. But one of my favorite books is called The Compound Effect, if you're looking for a book to read.
The compound effect.
Yeah, and it just talks about how, when you want to change a behavior, you start in increments.
Yeah.
And that increment, it multiplies itself over time. And a lot of times when we're trying to change a behavior, like, I want to read my Bible 7 days a week, right? But you're not doing it at all. So
Yeah.
it's better to start with 2 days a week than starting at 7 days because
Yeah.
it's overwhelming. You don't do it. And then you'll find that after I've done 2 days for a month, I can add a third day.
Yeah.
After another month, I can probably add another day. And over time, it compounds and you're able to add more. So I love that whole idea of the compound effect, even when you're trying to lose weight, just doing a little bit.
Yeah.
I realized that for me, it's better to count hours than it is to better count calories.
Hmm.
So I said, okay, intermittent fasting works better because I just got to count my 6 hours that I'm left after I've slept, right?
Okay.
Than me saying, okay, so that was sugar, that was, I don't, my brain space doesn't.
Yeah.
But over time,
Uh-huh.
that it compounds, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
So you all are giving a lot of intellectual capacity, and we got a live question coming in here. This is a producer question right here, and we all of these biblical principles when it comes to seed and finances. Here's a question that I really want to see you all unpack. The question is, how do you break away from the poverty mindset, understanding these points that are associated with seeds?
Yeah. Do you want to start with your sermon? I know it's 2 weeks ago, but.
yeah, I think the poverty mindset, the core of it is scarcity. First of all, it's feeling like there isn't enough,
Yeah.
right? You may feel there isn't enough for too many reasons. You may feel you do not deserve to have a share of what is there, or you feel a limited supply from God.
Okay.
Either way, it's a poverty mindset. I think knowing first that as a child of God, and there's certain scriptures that I quote over and over again. Of course, we can have theological debates on the immediate contextual interpretation and all of that. But one of the scriptures I always quote, the Bible says, "A cattle on 1,000 hills belong to God."
Yeah.
I don't know about you guys, and I don't know how many people exist in this world. And it's also something that's helped me. It's an attitude I got, spiritual attitude. I don't care how many people exist. There is a cattle on 1,000, every 1,000 hills. There's just cattle everywhere. And cattle represents resources, God, wealth, and all of that from God.
Yeah.
And if I claim to be God's child,
Yeah.
I don't know how many other God's children exist. I don't know. That ain't my business. If I claim to be God's child, I cannot understand. You cannot convince me that I do not have access to that bank,
Yeah.
to that hill, to the cattle on that hill. It's just how I think. Now, and it's a personal journey.
Yeah.
And I'm not competing with anybody. I'm not comparing myself with anybody.
Yeah.
I don't care how many you got. I mean, you don't got. That's your business. I just know that based on my identity as a son,
Yeah.
I got what belongs to my father.
Huh.
That's on the one hand.
Okay.
But on the second hand, I also think that understanding how business works and understanding how wealth and value is created
Yeah.
and circulated, you just know you can never be poor. I mean, the only reason you can be poor is if the economy breaks down. But even that, you won't be poor because you're probably going to be smarter than the rest
Well,
of the
you may
folks.
start poor, but you don't have to stay poor.
What I mean is you cannot be poor. And being poor is not just about how much is in your account.
Okay.
It's the wealth of information. It's the value you add. It's the resources you provide. It's how people gravitate towards you. It's a state of being. I'm not talking about money in the account. Being poor is a mindset.
Okay.
Because you can earn $1 million and choose to redirect $1 million to people who are financially poor. You can do that and not have any money in your account and still not be poor. Because you have
You know how to
currency
create
flowing
wealth,
through
yeah.
you and around you.
Yeah.
So as far as you have currency flowing, there's value flowing the other direction. You can never be poor.
Yeah, I think that's why I like to get really practical because
Okay.
we over spiritualize. So if we use the term, orphan mindset, then everybody automatically thinks, or even poverty spirit,
Yeah.
right? The moment we say spirit, the people check out and they don't feel like it's anything that they have to do.
Right.
But all of it starts with how you think and how you think about yourself, how you think about others, and how you think about God. If you're thinking about God is correct, you're thinking about money is going to be correct too.
Yeah.
Right. And when that is clear, and this is the interesting thing, because even unbelievers have correct thinking about money, right? They talk about the universe and all these other things, but they have correct thinking. And then when you have correct thinking, I love this because people say stuff like this all the time. I want to give you guys this example. I saw it online. This guy was sharing his jet, right? He said, I just wanted to share my wonderful new jet. And somebody they looked at my jet and they said, oh, I wonder how many families that jet could have fed, right? Because, why do you have a jet? That jet
Right.
should go to the poor or whatever. And he's like, actually, it fed the workers at the factory that made it, the leather workers, like he made this whole list of how many people were touched by giving them the opportunity to build that jet.
Wow.
That is the spirit of abundance. That is the mindset of a son.
Yeah.
The orphan spirit is thinking about how do I get something for free? But a son says, I'm willing to put in some work to get something. And so he's like, I've actually fed a lot of families with this jet of mine.
Right.
As opposed to you guys think you could just, people say stuff like that. Elon Musk, if he just gave everybody $1,000 in the whole world, then they would, like, people don't even know that. People don't even know how to manage. They
Yeah.
don't know how to steward. The best way to steward is by giving someone a job. That
Yeah.
is the best way you can help someone break the poverty spirit. I am so grateful for the few employees we have, but I cannot wait to be a source of income generating on a broader scale because that's how you break the poverty spirit, not by me writing you a check.
Yeah.
May I add to? I love the example you gave, but may I add to it? It didn't just feed families; it is feeding families.
Yes.
The
And
gas.
we continue to feed. Now, people make an assumption, and it's classic poverty mentality. It's hard. You don't get to tell people like that because they think that they have a very robust mindset about values and morality
And they're self-righteous.
and so you just let it pass. You never respond to that kind of statement unless you got time to educate. You just let it pass. But now that we're on this podcast, maybe we can shed some light on this.
Yes.
There's something that's called seed value.
Okay.
You never eat your seed.
Huh.
People keep saying, well, if you have $1 billion, you can spread the $1 billion. There are poor people and all of that. I tell you, there is enough poor people in this world to consume $1 billion today.
Yeah.
And you won't nobody will be going to the bank. There is enough poor people today to consume $1 billion, and literally everybody will just have a small meal and the $1 billion is gone. Now, if you don't give those poor people $1 billion today, they will all survive. One way or another, they're going to find a way to survive. And if you invest that $1 billion over the next 10 years, compound interest or compound whatever may give us $10 billion if you invest it correctly over
Yeah.
10 years. The net effect
How many people you'll
of
feed?
how much you will feed and how much value you will create on a compound level
Yeah.
is mind-boggling. If you then choose to give a percentage of what is coming in
To the Lord,
to
a
the Lord
Legacy Center
and to
Church.
feed the poor,
Amen.
and to feed the poor and the Lord, it's a much better computation.
Yep.
Huh.
But people always are fixed on the person who is generating the wealth and why they have the instruments or whatever or the setup, the sort of setup. All of that is set up. You
Yeah.
have somebody who has a plane. See, nobody takes a plane to the grave,
Uh-huh.
right? You typically buy, sell planes, right? It's
Right.
value kept, value managed, value sold, value transferred. If you got to change your perspective on how you look at it. We're all managers.
Yeah.
You know, if you're looking at your 1 bedroom apartment and you're managing the apartment, whether you buy it or whatever, somebody else is in a shack looking at you and saying, "Well, if you could just give me some of your rent money," you know.
Yeah.
So relatively, it's all relative. And I could be looking at somebody who has 10 cars and 15 cars and I'm upset. No, it's all relative. That person is looking at the person who has $1 billion and it's all relative.
Yeah.
What matters is what you were doing with seed. Are you creating value? Are you growing? Are you shaping people's lives? Are you blessing people's lives?
Yeah.
If you are, it really doesn't matter where you live or what have you. All of those are just inconsequential.
Wow. I heard this and you're reminding me of this as we're winding up here. Because and I love the balance, the practicality of these things, of even coming out of these perspectives and mindsets. I heard this line that said, "You can't pray your way out of what you behaved yourself into."
Yeah.
And getting these practical principles and seeds and understanding what it means for us to multiply what God has already given us. So we're moving to the spa of this series and this message. Give us one thing without getting into those 2 weeks that we have left. What's one thing already that you both would say, here's a practical application that you should probably be reflecting on now?
Yeah.
Like what's the act or what's that thing that you both think we could be reflecting on already in this series?
Yeah, I think the biggest one is even what I shared on Sunday. What is your treasure? What is your time? What is your talent? And how are you investing it in this season?
Yeah. What is your time? What is
Yeah.
your talent? What is your treasure?
Yeah. And
How are you investing it?
Yep.
What about you, sir?
I'll ask the question, are you growing your talent or are you eating your talent?
Ooh.
It's that simple.
Are you growing your talent or are you eating your talent?
Because every point in time you're doing something. You're either living to the limit of your comfort, you're literally living to the limit of your resources, or you are cutting back so that some of it can be invested.
I am so appreciative of this series because, and this is a good thing. This don't feel good all the time. I know y'all seeing this. If everybody is always telling you what you want to hear, you need some new friends. If you the
Yes.
smartest person in the room, you might be in the wrong room. That's why I'm thanking the Lord for the room I'm in. I know I ain't the smartest person here. Listen, we're winding up. We got some things coming up though. Pastor Tim, what we got coming up this week, man?
This is Saturday. What we got going on? Yeah.
We got
our
open
kids.
children's open house.
Yes.
I seen that. Look, children's ministry, all those amazing teachers and workers here. Parents, please be on the lookout. We got
Yes.
our children's ministry open house coming up this weekend. Or,
1
no,
to 3. Yep.
is it
this
one
Saturday.
This
yep.
Saturday.
Yep.
You know what? I ain't gonna say where I'm supposed to be at right now. There's an open house that's happening though this Saturday. This Saturday.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I can't wait
Yes.
for all of you all to experience the open house that we have going on here.
And teens, you guys are going to get an email. We got
Oh,
some exciting
yeah.
news and
I seen it.
information coming to you this Sunday. Parents, we're going to ask you to join after worship just for a short snippet because you got to get back. This man is preaching the word on Sunday. But we
Look.
want to share some amazing new information.
9 and 11 Sunday
Yes.
right here. Look, I hope you all are enjoying this. Would you all do us a favor? You know, every week I get someone to stop us and say, we love Rewind. We love getting to sit down with our leaders and pastors and just to get to see you in a little bit of a different light and give us a little bit more. So thank you
Yeah,
all
you're
again.
welcome.
Y'all in the stride doing
Yeah.
all these things. But as we're winding up, ladies and gentlemen, this has been Legacy Rewind. We appreciate you all so much. Please, please, please make sure you are coming through to open house and be
Yes.
here Sunday. It's going down, Legacy Rewind.
Yes.
We will see you all when we see you.
Bye.